So, who were the Luddites, really? You might picture these angry guys just smashing machines because they hated progress, but is that the whole story? Let's dig in and find out who these rebels against the machine actually were.
You've definitely heard the word Luddite before, right? Maybe you've even used it to describe someone who isn't great with computers. Or maybe you've called yourself one just for wanting to read a real, physical book instead of staring at a screen. But is that what a Luddite really is?
Yeah, today that's pretty much the common definition. A Luddite is just someone who's anti-technology. But that simple definition misses out on a huge, fascinating, and really important story. To get the real picture, we've got to go back in time, way back, over 200 years ago. Okay, so we're heading back to England in the late 1700s and early 1800s. The Industrial Revolution is just kicking off. And before these huge factories started popping up and changing, well, everything, life for a skilled worker, like a weaver, for example, was completely different. See, a weaver back then was a seriously respected professional. They worked from their own homes, they owned their own tools, their looms, and they were their own boss. They set their own schedule, they were true masters of their craft, and they took a ton of pride in their work. And best of all, they earned a good, comfortable living. It was a life built on skill, independence, and dignity. And then, well, everything changed. New inventions started showing up that were meant to completely disrupt this way of life. It sparked this huge conflict between the workers and the new factory owners. And the real game changer? It was one particular machine. Say hello to the power loom. This thing was a beast, a huge automated machine that could do the work of a whole bunch of weavers, but way, way faster. And because it was automated, you didn't need to spend years learning the craft to use it. Factory owners, of course, absolutely loved them. They could churn out cloth faster and cheaper than anyone had ever dreamed of. This comparison right here shows you the trade-off, and it is stark one. The skilled, independent weaver was being replaced by an unskilled factory worker. These new jobs were in loud, crowded, dangerous factories for incredibly low pay. Basically, everything that made a weaver's life stable and respected was just vanishing. And to make things even worse, this was all happening during a time of major economic hardship. There were wars going on, which made food prices absolutely skyrocket. So think about that. At the exact same time people's wages were being slashed, the price of something as basic as a loaf of bread was going through the roof. It's no wonder workers felt like the factory owners cared more about their precious machines than about their families starving. So you can imagine people were getting desperate. And when people get desperate, they start to organize. To lead their movement, they came up with this mysterious, almost mythical figure to be their symbol of resistance. Here's the thing. Most historians are pretty sure a guy named Ned Ludd never actually existed. The legend says he was a young apprentice who smashed a machine in a fit of rage. So the workers adopted him as their imaginary leader, General Ludd, a hero who lived in Sherwood Forest, just like Robin Hood. Signing their warning letters with his name gave them a unified identity, and more importantly, helped hide who the real organizers were. And so, under the banner of this mythical Ned Ludd, the rebellion really kicked off. And I want to be clear, this was not random, angry rioting. Their attacks were incredibly organized, they were strategic, and they had a laser focus on one target: the machines. Think of a Luddite raid like a secret mission. It was a carefully planned operation. They'd hold secret meetings way out on the moors, using passwords to keep out spies. They'd blacken their faces with soot, march to a factory in the dead of night, and then, with almost military precision, they would destroy the very machines that were destroying their lives. Their main weapon was a massive sledgehammer they nicknamed Enoch. And this shows their grim sense of humor. See, the iron frames for many of the new machines were built by a local blacksmith named, you guessed it, Enoch Taylor. So the Luddites' battle cry was a warning. The same force that made the machines would be the one to break them. Now, as you can imagine, all this machine smashing totally freaked out the factory owners and the British government. They were terrified this was the start of a full-blown revolution. So their response was incredibly fast and incredibly harsh. Get this, the government sent 12,000 soldiers to hunt down the Luddites. To put that into perspective, that's more troops than they had fighting some of their foreign wars at the time. This wasn't a police action. This was a military occupation of their own country. And then came the law. Parliament made frame-breaking, smashing a machine, a capital crime. A capital crime is so serious that the punishment is death. Let that sink in. You could be executed for breaking a machine. The government was sending a crystal clear message. Protecting the new industrial economy was more important than the lives of its workers.
The conflict quickly got much, much more violent. At a place called Rawfolds Mill, armed guards shot and killed protesters. In retaliation, a particularly hated mill owner was assassinated. The government cracked down even harder, holding a mass trial that ended with dozens of Luddites being hanged or sent to prison colonies in Australia. This effectively broke the back of the movement. So the Luddites lost. They failed to stop the machines. But their story absolutely does not end there. Their fight left behind a powerful and lasting legacy that is so much more important than just a bunch of broken machines.
They may not have won the battle, but they started a conversation. Their protests forced society to look at the human cost of progress. They were among the first to ask, who does new technology actually help, and what happens to the people it leaves behind? And you know what? That conversation led to real change. The spirit of the Luddites helped pave the way for the creation of modern trade unions. Their struggle eventually contributed to new laws that improved safety in factories and limited how many hours people could be forced to work. They showed that when workers get organized, they have a voice.
So let's circle all the way back to our definition from the beginning. A true Luddite wasn't someone who just hated technology. These were craftsmen who used technology every single day. They were people who asked critical questions about fairness, about who gets the profits from innovation, and about whether technology should serve all of humanity, not just a wealthy few.
And those questions are just as relevant today as they were 200 years ago. I mean, when we talk about AI or self-driving vehicles or automated checkouts replacing jobs, we are asking the exact same questions the Luddites asked. What is our responsibility to the people whose skills are made obsolete by new inventions? Ultimately, the Luddites' story isn't really about the past. It's about our future. As technology continues to change our world at an incredible speed, their core question remains. Progress is inevitable. But what kind of progress do we want? And who should it be for?